Live. Okay.
All right, it's all right here on KRIM 96.3 FM. Good morning, Rim Country. Chris Higgins in the studio. Get a little late start on our Community Spotlight program this morning, but hopefully you guys having a great morning out there, enjoying the beautiful weather. Maybe we can get some more afternoon rains like we did yesterday. That'd be nice. This morning we are talking with the Gila County Elections Department, Elections Director Eric Mariscal, and Gila County Recorder Sadie Bingham. Good morning, guys. How are you doing?
Good morning.
Good. How about you?
Hey, doing great, doing great. Thank you so much for coming in to talk about this year's primary election. And for those listening and watching on our KRIM Radio Facebook page, I encourage you to go to the Gila County website, gilacountyaz.gov, and even if you do a search, Gila County elections, primary elections, that page will come up, a link to this page that is called July Primary Election Fact versus Fiction. Because unfortunately, here in Payson, there's just a lot of fiction out there, and it's good to get the facts. So that's why I'm very happy to have you both on the program this morning to talk about, I think mainly, this primary election and just to get facts out there of what happened, what didn't happen, and how the process works, basically, because I think, unfortunately, there's just a lot of misinformation that gets put out there. People assume they have heard from somebody, they heard from their neighbor, that heard from their cousin's uncle, that somewhere else, that they're an expert in this, and that's not supposed to work that way. So yeah, again, I guess with the primaries, if you just want to, I guess, go over basically the process. I know it's a lengthy process, but maybe some of the highlights. Okay. Yeah, condense and some of the highlights, some of the areas that people had concerns with.
Here off the bat, it all starts with the recorder's office because they're the ones that, they get that first warning order where they've got their stuff that they're going to do, and that's usually with the mail out. So that's where it all begins. That's where it starts initially.
So we start basically 90 days before the election. 90 days before the election, we mail every registered voter a 90-day notice. And what that notice is, it will tell the independents, hey, it's a primary election. You need to either update your information or pick a ballot. Well, and pick ballots, excuse me.
Yes.
And it'll say a Republican, Democrat, or a nonpartisan, which is a town-only ballot. And that is according to state statute. We have to do that. We mail that out 90 days. We ask to get those back about a week before the first day of early voting. And then the close of registration is 29 days before the election, and then all early ballots are mailed out 27 days before election day. If you are an independent and you did not request a ballot, you can still call our office all the way up until the 2 Fridays before the election to have one mailed to you.
And now I'm a good person to be talking to right now because I'm registered independent. Have been for over 20 years.
Same here.
And I appreciate, I don't appreciate how independents basically are kind of kept out of, aren't treated the same as Republicans and Democrats, but that's that's not the county, that's on a state or federal level. But what I do appreciate is now not having to register. Like I remember to vote in the primary as an independent, you had to change your party affiliation to Republican or Democrat to receive a ballot or to get a ballot to vote in the primary, where it's not like that anymore. And that's nice. That's a lot better. And so I know I received, some emails from independents, hey, what's going on? And I thought,
there's always a little confusion because in a presidential election cycle, the primary is preceded by the presidential preference election.
Yes.
And that's the one where the independents, unfortunately, are put to the side and said you cannot participate, you must be a party member. So that lag kind of carries on with the primary. They remember being told they can't vote because it's, that sort of thing. So there's a little bit of confusion there. So it takes a little bit, and that 90-day notice, the letter that goes out, unfortunately sometimes sits on the table before it's too late.
I remember receiving mine, and I looked at it, and I prefer voting in person. I've always done that. That's what I prefer, so it wasn't an issue for me. I thought I'm going to go to the polls and get a ballot and vote. So a question I did have, I've seen some of the, the numbers where you have all the numbers of registered independents, Republicans, Democrats, and then the ballots received from independents, Republicans, and Democrats. So me as an independent, I go in, I selected a Republican ballot, I vote in the primary. Is that recorded as a Republican ballot or as a?
Yes,
Yeah.
so it does not change your political party.
No.
But it will notify us that you chose a Republican
Yeah.
ballot, because at the end of the election, we have to give those numbers to Eric.
Yeah.
Are you talking on the canvas where it
Yeah.
says, yes,
Yeah.
so on the canvas, it shows, I wanna say 73.
So,
I
Yeah.
wanna say it's
Jurisdiction,
73.
we have the jurisdictionals, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
but it's under unaffiliated, I
Yeah,
think it
right.
says.
Yep.
And that is not the independents, that is people who only voted for the
Local?
town
For
council.
local.
Jurisdictional.
Not
Yep.
just, not just
Jurisdiction.
Payson, that goes for Globe and Miami.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
all of our cities and towns, there is that option,
Yeah.
just select the.
And I think that was some of the confusion, or
Yes.
some people looked at that and they said, wow, look, only 73 independents came and voted. And I thought, wait
No.
a second, no,
No.
because as an independent, most chose a Republican or a Democrat ballot.
Correct.
And then it got recorded as Republican or
Yes.
Democrat. So, yeah, that's, I think, some confusion there when people saw that and they thought, wait, oh my gosh, hardly any independents voted in this primary. And that
That's not the
wasn't
case.
true.
Correct.
Yeah, so, the process, after, and I know there was some confusion, and maybe you can talk about ballots, early ballots, or when, the ballots, when they're picked up out of the boxes, or ballots that are mailed in, when the cutoff is, and then ballots that come in after that, or received after.
Absolutely. So the early ballots, we receive all the way up until election day. You have until election day at 7 p.m. to turn in your early ballots.
Mhm.
My staff and a security guard go to all of the drop box, and we don't disclose what route or when we're going, just for security purposes. But they do go quite a few times during the week and pick up all the drop box locations. We pick up the drop boxes that are at the recorder's office here in Payson and in Globe 3-4 times a day. We go out there and check them. There's a new state statute that says that you have to put in there that you received the early ballot. So we have to mark it as received, and then we mark it as accepted. And then we send those to Eric's department. But what we have to do, and this is where a lot of confusion is too, people are saying, all of a sudden you found 2,700 ballots. Where do these 2,700 ballots come from? Well, what happens is we have to stop processing early ballots Friday at 5 o'clock. And so the 2,700 come from the polling places and the drop boxes between Friday at 5 p.m. and election day at 7 p.m. Sorry about that. And so we received 2,200 through the mail and the drop boxes. We received a little over 500 from just the polling locations.
Wow.
So what happens is we have to wait until the poll books from the polling places are uploaded into our system to see who voted at the polling place. So then we can verify that these early ballots, they are not double votes. Like how you went to the poll.
Yeah.
But you did say you received an early ballot, you turned it in on Saturday. Well, it doesn't show in the system that it was accepted, so you go to the polling place and vote. But if I accepted that and you went to the polling place, that'd be 2 votes for you.
Yes.
So we hold all those until the polling place is closed and that is uploaded. And then we verify all those signatures and make sure everything's good, and then we send them over to the elections department. So there's nothing.
Yes, so that also explains one of the allegations or something, that was said, all ballots must be counted and tabulated on election day.
Right.
But
It's not
that's
possible.
just not possible.
It's not possible. And of course, the provisionals and the earlies that come in late, they have to be verified by Sadie's office. Now, me and my staff member, we're usually about 1:30 in the morning, we are collecting that download, sending it to our vendor so that they can convert the file so that Sadie can go ahead and begin processing the ballots Wednesday morning. We don't bring our early boards in until about noon because Wednesday morning we're doing a lot of checks and stuff, so on, so that we can make sure that we have everything accounted for, that everything is where it's supposed to be. And then, of course, we bring our early boards in, and one of the things that we've been doing for a long time in Gila County, that it was just recently turned into legislative law, was that they require, this election, they required poll workers to count the early ballots that were dropped off at the polling locations. Okay. we've always done that in Gila County, and one of the reasons that we've done it is so that when I get a kind of a general idea of what we've got coming back or what we have left to process, that way I know how many of my early boards, they're the ones that process the ballots, get them ready for tabulation. So if we've got maybe like 500-600 ballots outstanding, that's not going to necessitate me bringing in a full, 4 boards, 8 people to process 800 ballots. Because one board can take care of that many ballots in a couple of hours. So we always have used it for, to identify how many people are we going to need to process these ballots so we can get them done quickly, efficiently, and get them, tabulated so that the, citizens of Gila County can see the results. So we're there till, like I said, 1:30 in the morning, getting that so that Sadie can have that information right off the bat. And we come right back in at 7 o'clock, so we're burning oil left and right on this one. So and then we get our early boards processing. In this election, we had that number that we knew was there. And it's like she said, it's, these are everything that comes in over the weekend, the earlies that come in over the weekend, on election day. And we tabulate on Friday before the election, because that's about as close as we can get to it. After that Friday, it becomes a mad dash for us to make sure that we have our deliveries of equipment going to the polling sites. We're trying to, get last minute poll workers trained if we have poll workers that have dropped out over the weekend due to illness or whatever. So we try to get those emergency poll workers trained so that we can get them to the location. So, and then Monday, we're helping to set up the various vote centers in the Payson area and Star Valley. So we don't have any time to do any more processing or tabulating of the ballots, so Friday's that date. So we have a 4-day accumulation of earlies that come in through the mail, dropped off and whatnot, so.
And again, if you want to get more information and also it's information and see, fact versus fiction on the GilaCountyAZ.gov website under more news. You can click on July primary election, fact versus fiction, and get information there.
So that, there wasn't 2,700 ballots that were found. We knew exactly approximately how many we had. And this year, we've actually finished tabulation of all leftover earlies and all of the provisional ballots by Thursday. We finished a day earlier than normal. And so, and so people said, well, there's a big, well, yeah, because, we released the information to the media and the various jurisdictions that have races and stuff like that, and how it filters down because of the fact that we don't have daily publication papers and stuff like that, so it's not going to be something that's going to be picked up right the next day. And we try as hard as we can to get that information to the, for instance, the roundup, so that they can get it in their edition and so forth. But sometimes it just doesn't, the timelines just don't meet up, and we can't get them that information before they go to print. So it's one of those things everybody thinks, oh, it's not being done, it's not taken care of. And we also have 24/7 live video that we have that we're watched on, and it's there. And then whenever we're processing ballots or tabulating ballots, it's always recorded for just whatever reason. Maybe somebody has some kind of question, or they're like, well, there was something that went wrong or whatever. They can pull it up on video. We can go back and say, well, no, here it is, and didn't really see anything.
And that was something that was said or you heard.
That was another
cameras, 2 cameras in the election room were turned off.
Right, and they weren't turned off. They just weren't recording, but they were still streaming. And the reason they weren't recording is because there was nobody in there doing anything. We weren't processing anything at the time.
Gotcha. So it was being streamed, but just not being recorded.
Correct. Yeah, because we weren't processing anything at that time.
There is a rumor going around because the clock, if I understand correctly, the clock is dead. There's no batteries in it or something. So there's a clock that says it's 2 minutes till 5 o'clock in the office or where you tabulate. And so there's rumors saying, oh, you're not doing anything. It's turned off because it hasn't moved. The time hasn't moved.
Right.
No, that clock.
We have 4 clocks in our department, and when we first acquired them, we put them up and put the batteries in and everything like that. But for some strange reason, we have 4 clocks and we all have 4 different times. We have 4 different time zones in my elections department because whichever room you walk into. And some of them are vertically challenged for me, so I don't necessarily go fix them.
You have Sadie to do it.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I used to have one of my staff members, she would do it, but she's no longer with us. But she had that reach and she would get that there. I changed it and it's still backwards, so we'll just basically gonna either acquire new camera or new clocks, or we'll just be like Vegas, we won't put them into place or anything like that.
Well, we have some super sleuths here in Payson, and boy, they, I guess in a past life, they were detectives, and they just.
And I understand, you know, it's understandable. I mean, you're looking at it and you're trying to like, why is that clock not moving? That's, you know, it's a valid point, you know, I can see it. And as soon as it was brought to our attention, we went ahead and made sure, okay, let's get the clock, let's bring it down, you know, and so, you know, that way nobody was, you know, worried about it any longer and stuff like that. But I you know, like I said, everything nowadays is like, okay, we'll, you know, and we'll go that extra step to make sure that we don't have any, you know, deficient clocks in there next time so that there won't be any issues on that regard.
Well, I have to believe that also the results here in Payson for those council seats, that was crazy how that, you know, ended up so close. I've never seen an election that close.
Every once in a while, you know, statistically, it's just going to come down the line. And whenever you have, you know, a lot of candidates for X number of offices, you know, and if your turnout's low, you're gonna see some numbers stacking up like that. And it's really no surprise to me because we also conduct jurisdictional elections for special districts, school districts, fire districts, water districts. And those locations, some of them are rather small. And so you'll see results, well, you're going to be separated by 1 or 2 votes.
Yes.
And that's simply because of the volume and the turnout associated with it.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm not a mathematician. Thank God I'm not. Because you know, I mean, I can do my basic math. I remember it was one of the things when I worked for Sadie. She was like, "Can you count?" And I said, "Yes, I can," because it was very important. Anyway, but so you know, it's just one of those things, you know, and the tight races and lower turnouts, they're going to have an impact like that. So.
Yeah, and I don't know the total number, but here with our Tono Apache tribe, their elections are usually very close, where they're decided by 1 or 2 votes.
Right.
Pretty, I don't want to say consistently, but on a more regular basis,
Right.
because it is such a low number. But when you have
And
over 5,000, it's like, wait a second, over 5,000 and 3 votes separating 4 candidates. That's
well, this primary election was a lower turnout than what we had seen in the
I think
past.
the town was, what, 23%
Yeah, it
or
was
something like that?
not quite the numbers that
I
we normally
know. I want to say last primary, maybe 6,500 or so, and this one, 6.
We're not far. We're
61?
not too far off of a deviation path or whatever. But yeah,
Gotcha.
it is a little bit lower than the last one. And you know, I don't know. Just shifting demographic numbers and registrations, and you know, people like. Well, unfortunately for this particular election, there were no Democratic candidates for any county office.
Correct. Yeah.
So that may have had some sort of an impact on that. And,
Yes.
And on the other hand, there were, you know, some races that were pretty much, you know, people had a pretty good definitive idea where they were going, and you know, so.
Yes.
But you know, in the past, I mean, there was an election. It might have been maybe 8 years ago. I'm not sure, but I think it was Cave Creek or somewhere down in the valley, the West Valley. I believe they had a race, and it was decided by a card game because they tied
Wow.
for the candidates, and so.
A card game.
A card
Game of
game.
chance.
That's it.
I
yeah.
think
That's how
for us
determined.
it's a coin
Coin
flip.
flip, right?
It is a
Mhm.
coin
Yeah.
flip. So.
And you know, this is
Wow.
not the first, you know, tied election. That was like, I think it was like maybe 2 or 3 election cycles. Our town of Miami,
Yes.
they had what they refer to as a home rule question on their ballot, and,
Okay.
and it tied.
Okay.
And so when we went back into the recount, we recounted. It came out the same. It was tied. And in the state of Arizona, unfortunately, when it comes to propositions and that sort of thing, if it's a tied race, then it is deemed a failure.
No.
So yeah,
Gotcha.
so that's how
I don't
that.
know if we have time to
Yeah.
go over how the recount happened.
Yes, that's
Oh,
what
yeah.
I was going to
If
ask.
Eric can
Yep.
explain that, because I'm getting a lot of calls, but Eric oversees that and also the town, and so.
Yeah, it's just the recount. One of the first things we had to do for the recount was that we had to put it in the paper that we were having a logic and accuracy test to once again test the machines prior to being, you know, utilized to scan the ballot. And of course, the programming on the machine for that particular recount, it's specific to that specific race. Nothing else is tabulated. We don't go recounting races for anything else. It's solely
Yep.
specific to that race. Unfortunately, because we have all of our stuff, you know, we have quote centers now with a lot of ballots and intermingled stuff like that. It takes a little while. We were finished within about 5 hours.
Okay.
Probably could have done it within 4, but we took a break for lunch. I don't like pushing anybody past that, you know. Being hungry is not good when you're working. This kind of stuff.
Hangry. When
Yeah.
you're hangry.
Right, yeah,
You're
you
hangry.
don't want to be doing
Yeah.
that. So basically the recount is just simply, you know, we've got that specific race program that we're scanning for to get the results, and we just simply take every single ballot that is affected, that has that base and race on it, run it through the system all over again.
And it is court ordered.
Court ordered,
Yes.
yes, it is
Yep.
court ordered because it did trigger, because it was in that range, that mathematical formula that they determined the closest and so forth. And so the initial filing was done by the town of Payson, because Tracy Bailey, the town clerk, she is the filing officer. She handles all of their candidate races and information and so forth and so on. So it's basically their election, we're just performing it for them. Technically, we are their vendor. And so they are the ones that had to go to court, receive the order, and then the court order was issued to us, and once from that, we did have our LNA program and all that so forth, and counted the ballots. And then, you know, like I said, we were finished. What took us took like 5-6 hours. But unfortunately, we can't release those results. We turn them over to the town clerk, and then today, I believe, is the 13th. They're back in court.
14th,
Yeah,
yes.
14th. Well, I think was it maybe yesterday, and then they go back into court and they give the results to the judge reviews them, and then he goes ahead and declares them official and
Yep.
okay, and then they can release the results. I don't know if she's released the final results yet, or.
I don't think so, unless it
Yeah.
happened this
Yeah.
morning
It
within
may
the
have-
last hour.
I think they gave us to the 13th.
Yeah.
The judge was very good about that because, you know, who knows what kind of unforeseen things
Yeah.
would occur.
Yep.
And just in case, gave us a little bit of a breathing room break there and so forth. But like I said, like it was quick. It was, like I said, 6 hours. Like it could have been done in 5, but we just took a break for lunch. But we were done. So yesterday they had to sit on them. Today I think they go into court and then they can get the results released. So sometime today, I'm guessing that Tracy will be releasing those results to the various media outlets and candidates and so on. But, yeah.
Okay, well, there we go.
Mhm.
And that'll be good, get those, and then move on.
Move on, yes,
Move
exactly.
on, oh, I know. Again, talking with Eric Mariscal, the elections director for Gila County, and our Gila County recorder, Sadie Bingham, and talking about the July primary. And I encourage people, again, go right to the source, the gilacountyaz.gov page. Under more news, you'll see July primary election fact versus fiction, and that's really the best place to go for accurate information. I know your neighbors mean well, but you know, if they're maybe listening to unreliable sources of information, it's just not good. It's not good and then to be sharing wrong information as well. Just makes it worse.
We were trying to correct all the wrong information this election, and there was candidates putting out the wrong dates to return ballots, wrong places to vote. We try and correct that. So if you go to our Facebook page, we give you updates every day of anything that is going on or any changes that might happen. The Facebook and the Gila County website are great sources.
Yeah, our public information officer, Paul Wolterbeek, is, they're very much on that, and they keep everything updated. And, you know, they're the ones that kind of like, you know, say, hey, you guys, what do you want to do with this? Do you want to address this and get some facts out there instead of the fiction, so.
No, and it's always good. Always good. Well, anything else you would like to share out
I would,
the elections?
one of the things that I would like to share is like, if the voter just takes that one moment, give the recorder's office a call, checks their information prior to the election,
Yeah.
it saves a lot of hassle, you know, and it's one of those things, that's the one clue one, you know, tip I can give to a voter is like, check your information well before that voter registration deadline comes around. Just give them a call and say, hey, I'm just checking my stuff, is it still the same? And they'll ask some questions and they'll be able to determine, yeah, everything's good, you're gonna walk into that polling location, you took that 5 minutes to check your information, it all checks out, everything's good, so when you walk into that polling site and you present your ID, you're gonna go through the process a lot more smoother if you had to check. And unfortunately, I know one of the things that we had a lot of this time of this go around because of fires and stuff like that. We had a lot of people who got stuck up here from Maricopa County.
Oh, okay.
And you must vote in your home county. We cannot take Maricopa County ballots, even on an emergency because of the fire. We couldn't do that, and we explained it to a lot of them. But a lot of times, if they just take that couple of seconds, call the recorder's office and check their data, their information, when they come in, they're not going to have any issues. It's going to be smooth sailing for them.
Yeah. So that is a good point because as I stated earlier, I like voting, you know, on election day going into the polls, but something could happen. There could be a fire. There could be something that, or with me personally, something comes up, I can't make it in for whatever reason, and now I missed that opportunity to vote. So one of the things I noticed, and I don't know if this was the first year that Gila County did this, but the polling station set up in the Gila County building, the Tommy Klein Martin building, where you could go in person, and that was set up for how many weeks?
So it's always been.
It's always been?
Yes, so we have
Okay.
early voting 27 days before the election.
20, okay.
So what changed is the emergency voting.
Okay,
So in House Bill 2875, I believe it was, they changed a bunch of different things. And it says that we have to be open the Friday and Saturday, or I'm sorry, the Saturday and Sunday before the election.
okay,
So then I went to the Board of Supervisors and said, hey, if my employees have to sit here,
yeah,
why don't we do early voting? But it's called emergency voting.
okay,
So if you have an emergency, you come in and you say, hey, I have an emergency, you sign this statement swearing that you have an emergency, and you can vote early.
okay, so you do have to, or you should have an emergency, and what are some examples, maybe
Unfortunately,
medical?
We
or-
can't even tell you that.
You-
In state law, it says I am not allowed to ask what the emergency is. All I can ask you is, do you have an emergency that will prevent you from going to the polling place on Tuesday?
Okay,
And you can tell me yes,
Okay.
and I cannot ask you any more questions.
okay, so,
Sometimes they'll volunteer that information, and I did it one year in the past, sat there for a while.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, the big one was, one year we had a lot of fires.
yeah,
So fire crews were from the
Yeah.
Gila County were leaving, they weren't gonna be here on election day, so that was their emergency.
yeah. So you do have the option early ballot,
Mhm.
where if you're mailed an early ballot, you can fill it out, put it in the mail, a Dropbox, wherever, get it done that way. Or in person, this emergency, the emergency polling.
So you have early
process.
voting and emergency voting.
And,
So
yeah.
early voting, all the way up until Friday before the election, you don't have to sign anything besides your affidavit, your early ballot
You
affidavit.
wanna throw them a plug for, or throw a plug for the at-home voting?
Oh, yeah, we do at-home
Yes.
voting too. So if, we actually do quite a few of those. If somebody is unable to leave their residence,
Okay,
they can call us and my team will go out there and do home voting. They still have to show ID, they still have to, sign the affidavit, but we will go. We actually had a guy that was in Globe that fell off a roof, broke his leg, and they transported him to the valley. My team on election day went to the valley so that he could vote.
wow,
Very dedicated, and often unsung. They do
Yeah.
that, and nobody, they don't toot their own horn, but that's why I kind of threw that in there,
And-
because they do that. It's a very, very big thing for a lot of people if they'll show up at their home. They're
Mhm.
very appreciative of it.
so, when some people, there might be some people that hear, this or watch this and say, wow, there are all these ways that people can vote, is that compromising election integrity? And I think no, because you're still verifying. All those
Correct.
verifications are still in place. So checking their voter ID card and.
Yes.
uh,
So when they call, we have to verify last four of social, driver's license, date of birth, different things that
Okay.
we have in our system that we
Yes.
will check and make sure we are talking to that actual person.
Uh-huh.
Then what we do is we go to their house, they have to have ID, either a driver's license or an ID, the picture ID, or the two forms of ID. Same thing that you have to show at the polling location vote centers. We have to request that in-person early voting and home voting, emergency voting.
Wow.
Everywhere you go, you have to have ID,
Yes.
so.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, looking back, and I don't know maybe how many years back you have to go, to where it was just, you could only vote the day of the election at a polling station. It's not that far back, is it?
No.
Maybe 15 years,
So let's
20?
see.
That's,
It
yeah.
was before
20?
2008.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was about 2004, 2006, they put in the permanent early voting. or-
Gotcha, so about
but they-
20 years.
Yeah.
Yes, but they've always had the early voting.
Uh-huh,
You've always been able to go to the recorder's office, at least the last 22 years that
Yeah.
I've been in office. Because when I was first starting at the recorder's office, we'd come and sit in the assessor's office up here in
Gotcha.
Mason, and people would come in and vote early.
Would a lot of people do that, or?
Yes.
A lot of people would, okay.
Before the permanent early voting, we had a lot of people, there was a line to vote early.
Gotcha.
There was also the jurisdictional elections used to be when they were on right now we're on a consolidated election cycle. There's 4
Uh-huh.
elections throughout the year, and that's when we have those dates. Once upon a time in the past, though, cities and towns were able to hold their own elections.
I remember, and I remember when we were on a different election
Mhm.
cycle.
Yes, March and May.
I believe that's when I just got on council when that was changed.
Mhm,
Yes.
correct.
To where
Yeah.
it went to the state and federal.
And
Yeah.
Payson, the Payson area had taken the lead and pioneered the voting by mail at the town council level. They were
Wow.
kind of like the originators. And it became very popular and it became, very convenient for people. So
Mhm.
the town of Payson, when they started that process of voting by mail, moving towards that. They were kind of like they were the very big drivers on that, and so
Wow.
that's probably why we still have a high.
Yeah, we're up to about 73%, almost 73% of the voters are on the early voting list.
Wow.
And those ballots, in one of those fact and fiction, they do get counted because those ballots are tabulated the Friday before the election, and those are the first results that we release at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Because the polling locations are still shutting down, closing, coming
Yep.
in. So that first drop that we have in that evening, that first election result you see at 8 p.m. when it shows up on our webpage,
Yep.
those are all earlies.
Yeah.
Or walk-ins from the early voting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So they do get counted. They're the first, and like I said, we're on video, so trust me, we wouldn't be sitting around just, for nothing, because it's a time-consuming process.
And we tabulate, no, I shouldn't say tabulate, we still verify the signatures and everything
Mhm.
even after
Mhm.
the election. Even the ballots that we receive after
Right.
the election day, we still have to log them in our computer and say we received them on such and such date, but they are not counted.
They're not counted because
Correct.
they were received after.
So those are still logged in the system as received, not counted.
Wow.
Yes.
All right. Again, if you want more information on elections in Gila County, I encourage you to go to gilacountyaz.gov and the elections page. Also under more news, there is an article or information titled July Primary Election Fact versus Fiction, to where you can get, again, accurate information. So that way, when your neighbor, you're talking over the fence and they say, hey, did you hear this? They found 2,700 early ballots. You can tell them, no, that just isn't true. Here's the information, the factual information, and here's where you can go to read it yourself.
Yes.
So thank you so much for coming in, Eric and Sadie Joe, and thank everyone for listening and watching today. Also, a big thank you to One Tom Plumber for sponsoring our Community Spotlight program. Hey, time to get back to the music with some Stevie Wonder, Steely Dan, and Mountain, and more. But first, let's get a quick update from our National Weather Service.
With this morning KRIM weather forecast.
Okay, that wasn't too bad.
All right, see you.